the dual-track system of market price and planned price, but a split strategy of opening prices while providing targeted subsidies. Although the relevant departments are still hanging on CPI and extremely sensitive to indicators, the use of administrative force to force down prices has gradually been falsified by the market, and all parties are forced to accept reality through market lessons. It will be a matter of time before prices are relaxed. But this is not to say that opening up is as simple as opening up. It requires the maturity of various conditions such as timing, policies, and situation. This will be a gradual process. Considering the affordability of society, relevant parties are likely to adjust the pace and speed of price liberalization with changes in the situation, giving society enough time and space to transform and digest. At the same time, liberalizing prices does not mean that the government will let go. Regulation can still affect prices, but the methods have changed. It is no longer administrative control, but indirectly affects prices by influencing market supply and demand, such as the rice bag, the gettable basket project, or price adjustment funds. So the crux of the problem lies not in opening up prices, but in how to maintain social stability. Looking at the impact of reform, the most likely impact is on the price-sensitive vulnerable groups. In order to stabilize people, ease hearts and promote reform, the government's bottom-up targeted subsidies may become a protective cushion for the gradual liberalization of resource prices in the future. This turns the key question to how to target subsidies, whether directly or indirectly. The reason why education reform and healthcare reform are in a dilemma is because relevant parties attempt to reduce the burden on the public through indirect subsidies from institutions, schools, hospitals, etc. The starting point is correct, but subsidy institutions are prone to rent-seeking and corrupt, but they cannot effectively compensate. Therefore, indirect compensation is better than direct compensation. The focus of future subsidies is likely to shift from subsidizing hospitals and schools to directly subsidizing patients, impoverished students, and the poor with quasi-currencies such as medical vouchers, education vouchers, and food vouchers. On the other hand, the operating mechanism of subsidies precisely involves the sensitive core of structural reform. Indirect compensation and direct compensation will originate from two different power operations. The former requires the separation of the linear functions of the administrative department from the powers directly under the state, while the latter requires research on the separation of decision-making and administrative execution. It is difficult to truly achieve separation in the short term. It may be a long-term trend towards future policy goals. But under the pressure of the situation, strengthening the power of it also weakens the vigilance of relevant parties towards the international financial strategy hidden behind the financial crisis, which began with Soros selling short the Thai currency. From this perspective, it is the openness and complexity of the system, as well as the enormous imagination space of currency value, that objectively determines finance the arrival of civilization's fate. At the same time, the stability brought about by complexity and the calm waves brought by Chinese-style closing positions make Chinese people who are accustomed to gradual and passive correction subjectively unclear and unprepared for this new fate. However, in the middle of the management's balance of the asymmetry that arises in reality, in the spontaneous real practice of the private sector in addition to the stock market, there are also the emergence of private finance such as Guanqi and Zhejiang Fund, which has accelerated the process of financial opening up, gradually separated the real economy from the virtual economy, and formed financial awareness and rules. It can be seen that China is unconsciously entering the door of financial civilization, and the muddled state dragged by reality is expected to continue for a long time, due to a lack of understanding and reflection on the new civilization. The original regulatory methods have still been followed. However, as regulation has been repeatedly falsified, traditional theories and empirical methods have been overturned one by one, and all sectors of society will gradually recognize the situation and understand financial civilization. The misconception of price crossing was the most difficult year for decision-making in China. The situation is chaotic and complex, with various elements blending into different arrangements, the combination of policies. And behind the complexity lies the confrontation of interests and strategies, which makes it difficult for relevant parties to understand the situation. However, policies that have been overturned have been repeatedly taught by the market, such as price limit orders and external limit orders, which are equivalent to diminishing usage. Multiple equilibria are leading macroeconomic regulation towards macroeconomic coordination, but this does not mean that the original path was wrong, but rather that the space for success has been squeezed out. The reason why decision-making is so difficult is that the logical clues to the crux of the problem have not been sorted out yet, and we don't know how to take the path of comprehensive marketization. So we can only lie on the ground, just as we have just become familiar with the marketization of consumer goods prices. Its history quietly passes by, while the prices of production factors a crisis is brewing. Firstly, asset prices are facing deep adjustments. The stock price has been halved, bank wealth management products have disappeared, private equity and QDII have been liquidated, and land prices have performed a roller coaster. The turning point of housing prices is in direct confrontation with diving, and credit has tightened the funding chain of some real estate companies, leading to an asset price crisis. Secondly, the prices of resource goods are all trending red, although domestic resource prices have not yet been fully liberalized. The surge in international oil prices, grain prices, gold prices, and other factors has driven domestic prices to skyrocket, causing fluctuations in non-ferrous metal prices. In March, the factory prices of crude oil and raw coal increased by % year on year. The inverted oil prices both domestically and internationally have caused oil giants to suffer more and more losses, with Sinopec's performance declining by % in the first quarter and frequent oil shortages. Thirdly, the labor price crisis has been released early by domestic and foreign factors. The subprime mortgage crisis has brought about massive layoffs in the financial industry. In the past 9 months, Wall Street has laid off more than jobs. Global inflation has kept wage growth from keeping pace with CPI growth. From American writers to NPH police to British teachers, strikes have become a means of demanding wage increases. The domestic labor cost has also been steadily increasing due to the implementation of the new labor law, the increase in minimum wage standards, and the mismatch between labor supply and demand. In the first quarter, the average salary of urban on-the-job workers increased by % year-on-year, while pilots, ownership superstition and state motivation in the first half of GDP grew by %. Foreign trade showed a year-on-year decline. Inflation was high, and small and medium-sized enterprises were struggling sad. Bankruptcy has become a trend. Regarding this situation, the relevant parties are both very vigilant and very anxious. Based on continuous meetings and discussions, they have decided to change the macro tuning from dual prevention to one protection and one control, and have made sufficient articles on protection. In terms of policy rescue itself, it is understandable. But if analyzed from the perspective of macro adjustment history, today's scene is precisely the period of macro adjustment back then, and the current situation proves the remarkable achievements of macro adjustment. The reason why we dare not recognize the macro adjustment results is that the protection and pressure distribution of macro adjustment policies is uneven, which is basically characterized by the protection of state-owned enterprises and the laissez-faire of private enterprises, starting from the tight monetary and land supply in this end of regulation. The GEM has been delayed. Private enterprises have no access to financing, and state-owned enterprises and central enterprises can queue up to go public. The vast number of low-end enterprises in the industrial upgrading have completely lost their protection, and central enterprises take the opportunity to regain lost land and complete industry monopolies and market division, such as telecommunications. This result naturally cannot be accepted calmly by private enterprises. Therefore, the political foundation that can ensure the transformation of economic growth mode is fairness and justice. And based on this, policies can be revised the intention and effectiveness of the measures. Otherwise, the political show of Yigong Heilong will greatly undermine the government's credibility and make the cost of trial and error increasingly high. A prerequisite for establishing a political foundation based on fairness and justice is the establishment of a new concept of the country and a new concept of the people. That is, the understanding of the state transcends the violent machine in the stage of class conflict, but is independent of social entities, represents the common interests of all members of society, and takes the establishment of rules and regulations, maintenance of rules, and provision of public services as the main national motivation. Only when the national motivation is pure and selfless can the political principle of fairness and justice not be excluded. The new concept of the people is to restore the people from abstract concepts and exploitable slogans to specific individuals and interest groups. Only through the evolution of negation and negation can the people-oriented people find a realistic career, and the specific entertainment, mobile TV and online gaming competitions have emerged one after another, and even the Second Life allows people to live an alternative life, which is a product of young people's right-brainedness. Moreover, the right brain's counteraction and subversion of the left brain have already appeared. The separation of the real and virtual economy allows stock prices to no longer rely on physical performance but instead on imaginative space. Whoever has a good story can control expectations and the stock price rises quickly. The emergence of Google culture, with its casual and entertaining work culture, calls for freedom to play and emphasizes entertainment feeling and wasting time correctly have instead become manifestations of efficiency. And such things precisely indicate the expansion of the development space of the right brain. See. Continuing like this, the focus of the future will clearly shift from left brain to right brain. But this does not mean left brain the brain will be abandoned. Practice is the only criterion for testing truth, and science is the primary productive force are still unchanging truths. Left-handed thinking methods such as logic and calculation are still in use, but the variables that affect the situation increase, and factors interact with each other. In addition, the weight of uncertainty factors such as expectations increases. As reform enters the deep water zone, scientific and rational thinking frameworks are actually constrained. Jumping out of the frame with right-brain thinking may be more practical. Therefore, the two tractive forces of the aging left brain and the youth right brain are likely to launch a tug-of-war, so that the problem is no longer a multiple choice that is either left or right. And the solution will also become the middle way of both left and right and neither left nor right. This shift in mindset will drive turbulence at all levels of society, rapidly pulling society into a new era of business opportunities. On the one hand, as the focus of future society shifts from the left brain to the right brain, from rationality to sensibility, from technology to emotion, from the switch from efficiency to satisfaction will also shift the requirements for goods from functionality to ethics, from usefulness to entertainment, from one-way to interactive, and from material to spiritual. This change is not perceived through abstract thinking or rigid mode operations, but rather through personal experience and self-exploration. Free trials, free tasting, interactive is for home appliances, and sample rooms are gradually making experiential consumption mainstream, and online experiential marketing has enabled the domestic trial customer base to exceed 3 million. The comprehensive emergence of the experience economy indicates that the become stories, that is, who can tell stories, whose stories are more credible, and who has more wealth. At present, investment banks seem to be the king of stories. Whether it's internationally renowned Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, or China's struggling private equity funds, they are all passionate about telling stories, ranging from building friendships with the president and prime minister to hyping up rumors about the chairman of a listed company. The purpose of hype is nothing more than to increase their equivalent. The financial civilization does not exist street independently of other civilizations, but is linked to the first three civilizations. For example, agricultural listed companies graft financial civilization onto agricultural civilization, amplifying the achievements of agricultural civilization several times or tens of times through a financial civilization. Technology-based venture capital funds graft financial civilization onto industrial and information civilization, greatly improving the efficiency of industrial and information civilization. At present, the most successful grafting is still in investment (NKS), including popular IDG technology venture capital funds, VC venture capital, PE private equity investment, etc. Each of the four economic civilizations has its own differences. The older the era, the more complete its knowledge system is. However, at the same time, its knowledge is the efficacy also accelerates the decline. The characteristics of different economic civilizations vary greatly, and the corresponding knowledge systems have significant differences. Judging the development trend of the next civilization based on the knowledge laws of the previous civilization is similar to the Battle of Guangdong and Qiying. At present, the society is generally unaware of the arrival of financial civilization.